It was spring 1962, in Salem, Massachusetts. In those times people were very religious. The harsh realities of life in the rural Puritan community of Salem Village were evident, having just recovered from an outbreak of smallpox, leaving simmering tensions throughout the village. The Salem witch trials would be fueled by residents' suspicions of, and resentment, toward their neighbors as well as their fear of outsiders. But who would have thought that this mania would have been started by children? 9-year-old Elizabeth Betty Paris, and 11-year-old Abigail Williams, the daughter and niece of Samuel Paris, minister of Salem Village, began having fits and uncontrollable outbursts of screaming. A local doctor named William Briggs diagnosed bewitchment. Other young girls in the community began to exhibit similar symptoms, including Ann Putnam Jr., Mercy Lewis, Elizabeth Hubbard, Mary Walcott, and Mary Warren. The insanity started to spread. The girls claimed to be possessed by the devil and accused several local women of witchcraft. As a wave of hysteria spread throughout colonial Massachusetts, a special court convened in Salem to hear the cases. First, those accused would be held in a temporary jail. It was hot in summer and cold in the winter, infested with lice and stank of dung and tobacco. They were described by one visiting Englishman as suburbs of hell, though all of them were bad. The Salem jail was said to have been the worst. The original Salem jail, built in 1684, was replaced with this building on the same site in 1763. This jail remained in use until 1813, when it was remodeled into a home. It is gone today. Conditions in jail were harsh for those accused of witchcraft. It was rat-infested, filthy, and the accused witches were often bound with cords and irons for months. The dungeon was cold and foul-smelling, and kept in total darkness. Located near the North River, during high tide, it often flooded, with water rising to the prisoners' ankles. The small cells had no bidding, and no bars on the cells, as most prisoners accepted their punishment. For those who tried to escape, if they were caught, they would be immediately executed. In 1692, the Salem courthouse was on the second floor of the townhouse, which also housed the Latin school, on the first floor. The building stood in the middle of present-day Washington Street, just south of the intersection of present-day Lindy Street. It was here that the accused were tried and condemned to death. Every single item used by prisoners was kept during their imprisonment, and before anyone could be released they were required to pay their tab. Prisoners were charged for straw bedding and food, and if they could not afford them, they did without. Some were placed in coffin-like cells, smaller than a phone booth, in which they could only stand. They were also charged for their cuffs and chains. Accusations of more than 200 local citizens over the next several months took place, leading to 150 arrests. The youngest was a girl 4 years of age. Her name was Dorothy Dorcas Good. She spent 8 months in the prison's dungeon before being released. Her mother, Sarah Good, was later executed. Sarah Good was pregnant at the time, so her execution was delayed. Dorcas would witness the birth of her sister, Mercy Good, who died shortly after, probably due to malnutrition, lack of medical care, and unsanitary conditions. She would later also witness her mother being hanged on July 19, 1692. From this she would never recover. The interrogations were ridiculous. It was almost impossible to not be convicted. One of the most diabolical schemes of the witch trials was the witch mark. The common belief was that a witch teat, or extra nipple on a witch's body, permitted a familiar or imp to suckle human blood. It was also believed that these witches who bore these marks would not feel pain or bleed when the mark was pricked. Another test, called the sink or swim test, the suspect would be curled up in an unbreathable position with rocks tied to their ankles. If the victim sunk, it would obviously die, and the midwives would know it was not a witch. Yet if the victim floated, there would be a trial held. You were pretty much done for either way, because you either drowned, or were executed. Many who were examined by authorities, who induced them to confess, were tortured, often by hog-tying their feet to their necks, until blood dripped from their eyes and nose. Others were made to stand for long periods in a pillory, for hours with arms outstretched. On June 10, 1692, Bridget Bishop was hanged. Then on July 19, 1692, Sarah Good, Rebecca Nurse, Susanna Martin, Elizabeth Howe, and Sarah Wildes were executed. They were hung. Convicted witches would be picked up at the jail, loaded into a cart, and escorted to the execution site by High Sheriff George Corwin, who would sign their death warrants. The cart would turn left to the execution site at Proctor's Ledge. Crowds would gather for the executions, both along the way, and at Proctor's Ledge the executed were not afforded proper burials, but were instead cut down after death, and placed into a nearby crevice which acted as a shallow grave. It is speculated that family members, particularly those of George Jacobs, Rebecca Nurse, and John Proctor, came to the site under cover of darkness to retrieve the bodies of their loved ones and bury them on family property. 5 more were hanged on August 19, 1692, including one woman, Martha Carrier, and 4 men, John Willard, Reverend George Burroughs, George Jacobs Sr., and John Proctor. A simple memorial, designed by landscape architect Martha Lyon, was dedicated on July 19, 2017, the 325th anniversary of the hangings of Sarah Good, Elizabeth Howe, Susanna Martin, Rebecca Nurse, and Sarah Wildes. Embedded in the semicircular wall are stones engraved with the names of the 19 victims. One man named Giles Corey was arrested and refused to make a plea. He was subjected to the pressing of large stones. Still he refused to plea and was eventually overcome by the large weight of the stones and was pressed to death. This is a memorial stone in his name. The final execution date was September 22, 1692, on which 8 were hanged: Mary Easty, Martha Corey, Anne Boudetto, Samuel Wardwell, Mary Parker, Alice Parker, Wilmot Red, and Margaret Scott. For more of the convicted, Lydia Dustin and Foster, Sarah Osborne, and Roger Toothaker died in the unbearable conditions in the witch jails awaiting their execution dates. As colluders with the devil, they were not afforded proper Christian burials. Their corpses were thrown into shallow graves. In total there were 19 women and men taken to Proctor's Ledge to die by hanging from a tree. One female named Lydia Dustin, who had been arrested in April 1692, after spending almost 9 months in prison, was finally found not guilty by the Superior Court of Judicature in January 1693. However, she could not be released until she paid her jail fees. Unable to do so, she died in jail on March 10, 1693. Just as quickly as they started, the Salem witch trials ended in October 1692. Governor Phips stepped in and ended them after his wife Martha was accused of witchcraft. He forbade arrests following accusations of witchcraft, dissolved the court of Oyer and Terminer, and released the accused witches. As 1692 passed into 1693, the hysteria began to lose steam. The aftermath of the witch trials created closure in the community of Salem. However, it is surprising that only one of the 6 accusing girls apologized. Each girl lived a relatively normal life after the incidents, and 300 years later, the Salem witch trials testify to the way fear can ruin lives of innocent people, and the importance of due process in protecting individuals against false accusations. The Salem witch trials and executions are universally declared as a shameful part of history. The Puritans themselves recognized the errors of their ways, and held a day of prayer on January 15, 1697, known as the Day of Official Humiliation, to plead with God for forgiveness. In 1702, the trials were declared unlawful. However, It took more than 250 years for Massachusetts to formally apologize for the events of 1692. On the 325th anniversary of the first mass execution, the city of Salem dedicated Proctor's Ledge as a memorial to the victims who were hanged there. Although many initially believed that Gallows Hill was the site of the executions, recent evidence from the Gallows Hill Project pinpointed Proctor's Ledge as the exact site of the infamous Salem witch hangings. This is a list of the 19 people executed at the Salem witch trials. Sarah Good, age 39, Elizabeth Howe, age 57, Susanna Martin, age 71, Rebecca Nurse, age 71, Sarah Wildes, age 65, Reverend George Burroughs, age 40s, Martha Carrier, age 33, John Willard, age about 30, George Jacobs Sr., age 72, John Proctor, age 61, Alice Parker, age unknown, Mary Parker, age about 40, and Boudet age 70s, Wilmot Red, age unknown, Margaret Scott, age 77, Samuel Wardwell, age 49, Martha Corey, age 72, Mary Easty, age 58. Refused to enter a plea and tortured to death, Giles Corey, age 71. Thank you for watching Morbid History. Please like, share and subscribe. Until the next one.